Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Today in Title Tuesday I saw a game that I just really wanted to share with you guys. So here was the game. Weighing in the left corner we have Hikaru Nakamura with a rating of 3,218 ELO points. And in the right corner we have Magnus Carlsen with a rating of 3,264. Right, so clearly two heavyweights in the chess category. But they decided to troll us here a little bit. Hikaru played the move a3. Now, the best moves here for black are something like e5 or d5, or actually, according to the computer, the move c5 and if b4, knight f6. Do with this what you will. But I was expecting Magnus to play something like h6, right, to troll Magnus back. If you go a6, there are some advantages for white in this inclusion, because like if black goes c5, maybe you can play a wing gambit right away. And if black goes e5, there's lines like, let's say d4, take, knight f6, knight c3, and now you don't have bishop e4. So, I mean, there is some merit to the inclusion of the moves. Anyway, Magnus decided to troll Hikaru back and play the move g5. But the problem is that this move is just too bad. Alright, Hikaru played e4, grabbing the center. And here Magnus played the move c5. If you go something like bishop g7, white goes d4, hitting this pawn, and it's already not easy to defend. If you go h6, there's h4 for white, and black's already in pretty bad shape. So c5 by Magnus, he wants to control this square and this square, but Hikaru goes d4 anyway, and it's a good move. He's hitting this, and after the trade, now you're also hitting the rook in a corner, which you have to protect with a move like knight f6, but now white just takes the pawn. And black always has this move queen f5 check, but white can just go bishop d2, and white's in very good shape. So Magnus played knight c6, hitting the queen, Hikaru dropped back to d3, and now queen b6 by Magnus. Again, if you give a check on a5, there's bishop d2, blocking, and if queen b6, bishop c3, defending this, and yeah, white's already close to winning. I mean, knight d2, long castles, a very tough position. So queen b6 by Magnus, hitting this pawn, and here I was a little bit surprised as to why Hikaru did not take on f6. Because the bishop on f6 also protects this, and after it takes, look at black's pawn structure. It's completely damaged, and you just can play something like queen b5, defending this, and white will get a very good endgame, and he's pretty much winning already. But Hikaru played bishop c1, undeveloping the bishop. Now knight g4 by Magnus, threatening this pawn. So knight h3 by Hikaru, d6, knight c3, Hikaru wants to go knight d5 eventually, and knight ge5, hitting the queen over here. Alright, so Hikaru played queen b5, offering a queen trade. Magnus took. Now here apparently it would have been slightly more accurate to take with the knight, to try to do this. And if black takes on h3, you play the move f4. I mean, all pretty difficult to figure out over the board, but this would have been slightly better. But Hikaru took with the bishop, very logical, developing another piece. And Magnus took on h3, Hikaru recaptured, and played the move a6, hitting the bishop over here. And here, it would have been better for Hikaru to just give the bishop for the knight, and if it takes, let's say, f4. White is a nice, has more space in the center here, the king can come to e2, bishop e3 potentially. But black can potentially try to use his b file maybe with the bishop as well, coming to g7. So it's quite logical that white did not decide to go for this. So Hikaru goes bishop e2, but now comes knight d4, threatening this. So Hikaru goes king d1, and now Magnus decides to give up his bishop for the knight on e2. Hikaru recaptures and rook to c8. So he's bringing the rook to the open file, and Hikaru goes b3. I guess with this move he wants to stop knight c4, maybe go c4 himself potentially. Magnus goes rook g8, but maybe slightly more accurate would have been a move like knight f3. And I guess the idea is to split these pawns, kinda. Maybe go bishop g7 later, rook g8 as well. But Hikaru played the rook to g8, Magnus did, bishop e3, and now, again, I don't quite like this move by Magnus. I think he should have played something like, okay, the computer's saying knight f3, I kind of struggle to see the point of this move. But I guess it's stopping white from going f4 and going king d2 and gaining more space. But he played the move b5. And this creates a bit of a target on the queen side. Hikaru plays a4, hitting the pawn. So Magnus goes b4 and now a5. He isolates this pawn on b4 because a5 is no longer a move. But now Magnus goes e6. But actually the question really becomes with this move on with this pawn on a5. Is it a weakness, or is this pawn on b4 more of a weakness? So Hikaru goes rook a2, bishop b7, and knight at g3. king d7 by Magnus, king e2. And I think here Magnus was slightly careless for a second. I think had he played a move like rook to b8, he would have been in pretty good shape. Knight c6 is coming, followed by rook to b5, if we have a look here. And black seems to be doing pretty alright. And if white goes bishop b6, you can go bishop d8 now. And to be honest, I would already slightly prefer black in this endgame. This pawn on a5 is pretty weak. White still has an extra pawn, but it's this extra pawn on h3, which is not the most useful extra pawn in the world. And I think black should be doing pretty alright. And it's important that e5 can always be met with d5, keeping everything closed. But Magnus played bishop d8 first, so he wants to hit this pawn, and he doesn't want to allow Hikaru of planning this bishop on b6. But now Hikaru goes rook to d1, and this pawn on d6 is now a little bit weak, right, because it's no longer protected by the bishop. Rook to b8, but now f4 by Hikaru, and here Magnus probably should have played the move knight g6, because now the bishop cannot move because it will hang this pawn, but he played knight c6. Now came bishop c5 by Hikaru, and black's in a bit of trouble. How do you defend this pawn? Magnus played bishop c7, but now came takes, and e5. And it's looking tough for black. This bishop is hanging, the knight can potentially come in. But here Magnus should have played the move f6. Because if white takes with the pawn, you're not too worried. You can actually play a move like f5, making sure the knight cannot jump to e4. And still, this pawn is pretty weak. You can use the other rook to try to attack the pawns on the king side as well. And despite being down 2 pawns, the computer showing it's completely equal here. But Magnus played king to c7. But now Hikaru captures with the pawn. And after king d7, he goes knight e4. So now knight f6 is a threat. Knight c5 as well. So Magnus gave a check. King f3. He takes a pawn. Now came knight c5 check. And it's tough for black. Like, where do you go with the king? Right? I mean, this pawn is also hanging many variations. And Magnus went to e8. But now came rook g1 by Hikaru. He's threatening a checkmate over here. And what do you do about it? If you go king f8, there's knight d7, and you not only lose the rook, you actually get checkmated, because white goes here. Once again, rook g8 checkmate. So what Magnus still could have tried is taking this pawn over here. Now white should not move the king to the g file, because now it's blocking the rook, and black's doing pretty alright after rook here. And you also do not want to go to the center, because black plays f5 and you're checkmated. But what you want to do is you want to play a move like king f2. Right, and if check now you go, let's say king e3, and you zigzag out of the checks. And if black goes f5 to give himself an escape square, white can always play the move rook to g7, right, cutting off the king. And now white is threatening to go d7 check, and wherever you go, there's a checkmate on e6. So perhaps Magnus saw this and realized that the position was lost, but in this position he lost on time. So very nice win for Hikaru. He actually went on to win this title Tuesday. Magnus came third. Not a bad result, except for when you're the world champion. But in any case, it's great that we see these two playing regularly on chess.com. And hopefully we can see them playing later on as well in the late title Tuesday. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed this video, and I look forward to seeing you all in the next one.